Hello everyone, you may have seen Miles on the channel before
Hi.
because we put out the video about how in-ears are important, and then I've done the video about the ACS customs that arrived, which are amazing. And thank you for doing the ears and sorting all that out.
So stoked you like them, man.
Yes, but today we're doing science. And the science is how important is isolation and custom molding, and can using in-ears, if you use them kind of wrong, be the same or worse?
Yeah, it's an interesting thing. So this is an experiment I wanted to do for ages. Now it's kind of a question that has come up several times at gigs, and if you hang around with musos long enough, they'll kind of go, oh, sometimes someone will come off and go, oh, my in-ears were a little bit loud tonight. I wonder how loud they actually were. And no one actually knows. It's hard to quantify how loud is that headphone when it's kind of in your ear. And that's kind of what I want to drill down with. And you seem like the perfect candidate, a man with an ear for sound and an eye for an experiment. Let's do it.
Ta-da! So the burning question in my mind is, okay, well, we don't know how loud the headphones are because they're in your ears.
For sure.
So you've worked out a way. How?
Right. So obviously in-ears are manufactured and designed to really tight tolerances and specs, and there are obviously microphones and techniques to actually measure the frequency response, the SPL, the phase, all these kind of things. So there are actually microphones available, and one of which I use during our kind of quality procedures. Whenever a set of in-ears come to us, I always measure them, make sure they're right before they go out to a client. And so I've actually got a measurement microphone which has a coupler on it. Now the coupler is actually designed to essentially create the same kind of resonances as your ear canal. So the guys who are building, the big stuff like ACS, for example, they're using industry standard couplers which are like 15 grand or so. This is an industry entry level one which is about kind of 1,200 quid or so. But
still a lot of money.
For the purposes of what we're doing today, we are going to literally play some music, set some levels on our customs, with ambience and our generics, and then we will literally take that sound, pop it into the coupler, and we'll be able to tell you exactly how loud it is in SPL, in decibels. So then we can convert that to how long can you listen safely before you fry your ears or not. Are your ears automatically safe using in-ears or not is the kind of question that I want to ask.
Yeah, because I would have assumed that as soon as you've got in-ear monitoring, then you're good. But it turns out not to be the case.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. But or is it? I mean, this is the thing. So obviously, I now run an in-ear monitoring company, but I'm a kind of musician and sound engineer first. Yeah. So I suppose there is an element of bias in kind of where I'm coming from. So I'm glad I've got you on board, because as an independent, you are my transparency thing.
Yes, of course you're the advocate for in-ears because it's what you do. So you need someone like me who doesn't sell them for a living to be able to kind of be the straight man, so to speak.
But I would like to say though, this is something that I, as a giggy musician, I've wanted to know for years, and I've never tried it. So from my point of view, this isn't a video on saying don't buy universal in-ears, only buy custom in-ears. This is whatever you're using, let's work out whether it's safe for you to be using it that way, and if it's not, then let's try and help.
Right.
So kind of a bit of myth busting, and also, just seeing what's the difference. Because numbers are numbers. What does it mean in the real world?
So let's talk about methodology if we're doing science.
Science.
So the first thing we did, we've got a drum kit and a loud guitar amp in the room. All mic'd up so that can go through the headphone monitoring system, of course. And from there, we did with the custom headphones with the ambient style kind of let it sound through, and without, and with universal in-ears. I've got a set of, I think they're like $20 in-ears, because I had some other ones and they broke. And so like a lot of musicians, I would just use regular, just off-the-shelf stuff in that situation, thinking it's better than nothing.
Yeah, for sure.
And you used a set of universals that you have because...
Well, the set of universals that I have specifically are... Everyone, if you're a musician, you probably heard people bigging up KZs on Amazon, or just basically any in-ear monitor on Amazon that is kind of like 20 to 50 quid.
Right.
Better than the industry standard versions, and that's what we've got. So I thought if there's going to be a test, let's do it against the benchmark of what I see 90% of users using when they're
Right.
not using Shores, for example.
Yeah, makes sense. And so the first thing that we measured, we had the measurement microphone up next to where my head is.
Yep.
So kind of where either kind of close to where a drummer would be, or a lot of the time if I'm playing a cover show, I'm usually stood about 2 feet away from the drum kit
Yep.
as the bass player with kind of one ear ringing from the drums smashing away.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of up where I am, and that's getting us dB levels, which that's been calibrated before each one, right?
Yep. So they've all been. We've got a calibration stick, same way that most sound engineers will calibrate certain things for concerts and shows. So we calibrated it at a set level. So we knew that when we were playing in the room, that it will be at nominally. I think we settled in that room, in that space. It was about 104 dB or
Yeah.
so. That was kind of the comfortable level of you
Well, that's
playing
me
the
playing
kit
quite gently, yeah.
and the guitar rig doing what it did. So that was a good. I mean, it's a good benchmark for a loud show. That's a nice treated room. It's not like
Yeah, it's quite a lively room.
yeah.
If I really pounded Dave Grohl style, we're looking at maybe 115 dB or more. But that's when you're on a stage, a lot of that sound reflection isn't there.
Yeah, it's
So that's
dissipated
kind of-
and thrown out.
Yeah, because if you think about a stage, even in a room that's got quite reflective walls, you're only near one of them and then the rest of the sound gets fired out that way.
Yeah.
Whereas in an arena, you might have a backdrop of cloth behind you. And so comparatively, if you smash a snare drum, you get the direct sound and not a lot else, right?
No, and especially, yeah, like if you end up in some of the venues you'll end up playing in the UK, especially, big marquees, outdoor venues, like
Yeah.
the sound just goes away. So actually, but you will still
But it's
be
still high.
You'll be still pushing upper 90s to 100 dB on
Oh,
stage.
at least 100, I would have thought. If
Yeah.
you're really smashing the snare drum, even without that reflection.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
it's just worth noting that the levels are probably a little higher in there because of the closed-off nature.
Yeah.
But even so, that's important to say because if you're in the studio
If you're rehearsing.
or in
Yeah.
a rehearsal room,
Uh-huh.
yeah, I mean, you're going to get as much, if not more, arguably, hearing damage in a rehearsal room because the walls are just throwing it all right back at you.
Especially if you're not using earplugs. Because, okay, so, and to kind of put in a bit of context for what we're looking at. So I think we need to remember your exposure time is how long you can safely listen to. So
Right.
at 100 dB, 101, it's approximately 15 minutes before you start damaging your hearing. So if we were in there and playing for half an hour or so, for 15 minutes of that, our ears would be being damaged, degraded, in panic mode, not having a nice time.
Yeah.
And having been pushed to and beyond the limit. So this is why having some kind of in-ears, everyone goes, oh, well, if I'm putting something in my ears, I'm blocking the sound out. But then by proxy, you're then putting sound back in. How much are you putting back in? Is that still safe?
Yes.
How does it work? So that's kind of the whole principle of what we're trying to do.
Cool. So that's the science. So we got that nominal measure of what, 104 dB, give or take?
Yep.
Without any in-ears being plugged into that testing device.
Mm-hmm.
And we measured at each point where we would be adjusting our packs to get a sensible level with each set of in-ears.
Yeah.
And then you reproduce that using the same transmitter, the same receiver, the same volume level setting,
Yeah.
and plugged the in-ear instead of our ears into the measurer.
Yes.
That's the thing I've never seen before.
Yeah, so that's why it's called a coupler. It's because obviously a microphone's just an open grill, isn't it? And then sound hits it. Whereas with an in-ear, because it's so small, yeah, you need something to couple it to the microphone the same way your ear canal couples the world to your eardrum, which then gives you the sound. So
Right.
it's the same principle, and yeah, doing it that way, we can get a really accurate measurement of what is hitting your eardrum when we're playing in that environment. And so the way I asked you to approach it as well, because I've been thinking about this for a long time, is so we play to a click as well, so everything's kind of consistent. And you've done a lot of studio sessions.
Click is important.
I like to feel I'm pretty consistent as a musician. I've done it enough times now, so we kind of played through to a click consistently at an average of around 104 dB in the room every single time with different in-ears in. And yeah, then using the in-ears pack, it just meant that we had a tangible, measurable value of how, where we were at. And another reason I wanted to do that as well is because this is what we're looking at. If you're a musician out there in the world, you're probably using a wired pack or a body pack, right? And
Yeah.
some kind of wireless transmitter. So what we're doing hopefully will look familiar, so that if you know, and we've got the meters on the thing, metering it and standard kind of level. I tried to make it a gig simulation, not like a kind of Tenacious D gig simulator,
Yeah.
flying bottles kind of thing. Quite a niche reference. Hopefully people will understand that.
Oh, the rock and rollers.
I
Someone will
really
get that.
hope so. But yeah, so try and make it as accurate as possible as we can in a controlled environment to make it kind of roughly sciencey. So
Yeah. I mean, rough science is what we do. So let's cut to the live room. So, results. The results are in. We have our numbers on our really complicated analog system.
yeah, would you like me to reveal it? So let's talk
Yeah,
about
where are we starting?
So let's talk about the body packs first, because obviously we had a nominal level coming in, and we used the same nominal level for all of it. Again, like I said, consistency.
Yeah.
And so we started off with the ambience in as our kind of like essentially middle ground, kind of half isolated, or like controlled isolated through the Evolve ambience we were both wearing.
Yeah.
So on that we were kind of set a level of, you were exactly halfway on your body pack, which was kind of nice.
That's honestly not intentional.
But it worked out quite well because the numbers now kind of make sense.
Right, okay, because my goal on each one was to be, can I pick out the click without any strain?
Yeah.
And so in my kind of mind's eye, at least, I was aiming to have the click at the same level each time.
Yeah.
Interestingly, it felt like the levels of everything else changed around it, even though they did not.
Yeah.
But that was what I needed in here. And so for the sake of the scientific comparison, we didn't start messing with levels on
mixes or anything
mixes,
like that.
yeah. So a lot of it was kind of perceptive volume.
Yeah, again, that's why I wanted your help on it, because obviously I've been using it a lot and I always try and monitor quite quietly anyway. It's kind of always been my thing. So
Right.
I wanted to see what your numbers were like compared to mine. It's
Right.
like,
And also, you were stood a few feet away from me, and I was in the eye of the storm of the drum kit with all the kind of stuff blasting away at me.
for sure.
So I kind of had the priority of having to listen over that,
Yeah.
where I think that you kind of could get away with doing less of that.
Yeah, quite possibly. And also, I was in this scenario guitarist. So, like you say, once I've got that direct guitar signal, I'm kind of locked in. If I've got the guitar and the click, I'm not going to get lost in the same way that you would if you lose the click.
Yes.
Because you're kind of not auxiliary to what I'm doing, but
My priorities are different. Yeah.
exactly. So that was super interesting. So
Something that's also worth mentioning at this point, I think, is that it eliminated, by using the kind of the perceptive level, eliminated another variable, which is the sensitivity of the drivers in
Yes,
the headphones. Because if we tried to do these with a fairly robotic kind of way, the different sensitivities of different headphones would make this kind of invalid,
yeah,
because some would be inherently louder than the others. But
Yeah.
by setting the pack level to make a certain volume come out, which was a perceptive volume rather than a set number,
yeah,
we find the number.
exactly.
So yeah, that's going to give us these results. And so let's see what we got. So we started with the ambient ACS customs.
Yep. So with the ambient, you were at 6 o'clock. We're kind of as like a clock face, and I was at 4.5. So in theory, that actually translates to, at your ear with the ambient feature in, was you were actually listening at around 104 dB, which sounds quite high, but actually that's what it was in the room. So perceptually, you were matching what you were hearing.
Right.
You were essentially kind of bringing the world back up to you. And that's something that I've personally found on gigs. So I've gigged with the Evolve Ambulance, and there's been a point where I've been playing with drummers and I can't turn the drummer down, so I turn everything up. So it's almost like you've met that level. Whereas with me, like you say, because of where I was standing, maybe I was only at 89 dB. So 89 dB is it's 4 hours of safe listening, quite happily, kind of. It's cool. I'm safe in my bubble. I could hear everything I needed to quite happily, whereas you were still up in that kind of 15-minute territory, despite wearing customs and despite wearing ambient.
Right.
in-ears. So maybe then that's, I suppose then that starts the conversation of, if you're a drummer and it's really loud where you are anyway, do you want to be hearing stuff from around you, or do you want to be isolated because your kit is already loud enough? I mean, you mentioned that about kind of having a more direct sound when we got onto the other ones as well, which I think is something we'll have to come on to. But so with that was ambient, right? So that was with 17 decibels of isolation. So we went from 104 to 89, or you matched it. Interesting.
So I brought that back up with the headphone mix.
Exactly.
Interesting.
So in that scenario, then we're kind of going, were you actually safer or better off? Not necessarily.
Yeah.
So you had a click.
Yes. And I suppose then we'll come to other questions after seeing the rest of the numbers.
Of course, yeah. So, and then when we popped the blanking plugs in, I was at 5, you were at 5, and I was at 3.5. So then you were listening at 89, so you brought it down.
Right.
Nice. So you were then down at the level I was at with the ambience.
Right.
But then, in contrast, I was able to monitor so much quieter. So I was monitoring between 60 and 70 decibels.
Right. And what was I monitoring at?
You were monitoring at 89.
89. Right.
So that's your 4 hours of safe listening time. You can do the gig, setup, sound check, no dramas from behind the kit.
Cool. Because of course, as a mix engineer, I'm supposed to mix around 85. So only 4 dB louder. That kind of tracks.
Yeah, and that's a live environment as well.
Yes.
So that's kind of, you personally wouldn't necessarily do an 8-hour session on the drums in a studio, and if you did, you would work in a different way. You wouldn't be sat solidly for 8 hours.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, that's interesting. And then let's go to, so the customs all have a controlled, manufactured level of isolation, a guaranteed level of isolation, right? They're going further into your ear, and they're either giving you 17 or 26 dB of isolation. The interesting part was when we went to the universals. So KZ's off the shelf like everybody does. I was actually, on my body pack, I was at about 8.5, 9 o'clock, and so were you. So we were both about the same level.
Right.
And like you said, differences between the drivers. I was listening at around 111 dB to hear the click. So I was above the drums in the room, and you were at around 109. So again, above the drums in the room, but having to compensate to hear everything because the isolation just wasn't there.
That's right. I noticed that it felt really loud. It felt like, but it was the only way to bring the click to a point where it was kind of, I could pick it out.
Yeah. I'm laughing because we were both sat there kind of playing away, and we did a couple of takes of just to set the levels with the customs, didn't we? We both did one with the universal and went, that's loud enough.
Yeah, we went, I'm done.
I know where that's meant to be, which was interesting because I think you'd expect that 110 dB, like that's louder than, it's a loud rock concert.
Yeah. Well, we started playing through before the take to get the levels right. I got them right. Yeah, we did one 8-bar take and went, yep, done.
Yeah, happy days.
Yeah, not doing that again. Ow.
So obviously 110 dB, you're looking at, minutes as a safe level before you start doing some kind of damage, probably in the upper register of your hearing. So that in itself, I feel like mirrors my experience of working with musicians who are like, sometimes come off, they're like, oh, my ears, they don't really isolate really well and they feel really loud. Like, so they take them out, they take one ear out, because actually you take one ear out, it makes the world around you clearer again, because rather than pumping this kind of harsher mix, and let's be honest, especially a lower level mix is not always going to be the greatest, especially having to look after it yourself rather than an engineer.
Yeah.
It's going to be a bit harsh, it's going to be a bit rough around the edges. So pumping that in at that level, you have to draw it up to be able to pick out what you need. And I think we both experienced that.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. I was definitely getting to the point where, it was really quite painful. And if I'd taken out the ears, it wouldn't have even been much better. But we've both played hundreds of shows over the years, and I always find that it's the ones either where it's a really heavy drummer or a really reflective surface near us.
Yeah.
Where even with the same system with universal in-ears, I would come off and I would have ringing ears. For a long time, I had an in-ear system that had a limiter built in.
Yeah.
And with the limiter, with everything full, it was topping out and I couldn't pick things out. So I ended up turning off the limiter
Ooh, yeah,
because I kind of had to pick things out. And I thought I was doing okay because I had the in-ears.
yeah,
Wasn't enough.
yeah.
It's amazing my hearing's okay now, but it took quite a while of not playing shows to get back to like full ear health.
Yeah, your ears are amazing, pliable things, and they will recover. But if you do it too much, that's when stuff like tinnitus, music-induced hearing loss, and stuff kind of can start to kick in, which is a huge problem. So I think it was a really interesting exercise. I don't know about you, man. It was so great to get in a room and actually hash it out.
Yeah.
And get some actual numbers, because I feel like now, like I said, we were metering kind of 75% on the wireless system we were using, and then with ambient in-ears, packs on halfway. I mean, to be able to turn around and say that was between 89 and 104, well, around 89 dB, realistically.
I mean, I'm pretty sure that if I, with at 89 dB of listening level, if I then spent some time really fine-tuning that mix, I could bring that down by 4 dB without very much effort.
I think so, yeah.
Whereas going from 110 and trying to get a good mix down by 20 dB is an impossibility.
Yeah, I think so.
And so, yeah, I've definitely kind of, my takeaway from this for myself is if I'm playing a show and I'm not behind the kit, then the ambience will be good for me because I can step away from the kit just a little bit and then take that pack level down.
Yeah.
If I'm behind the kit, then it has to be plugged up because that isolation, because I'm this far away from things that are making that 100 plus dB noise,
Yeah.
I then can't do the ambient thing. But again, that's just for because I don't play light jazz. I play like heavy stuff.
Yeah.
And so yeah, for me, that's my conclusion for myself. But of course, everyone's free to take away from this whatever they want to.
100%. Like I said, it's just a bit of a personal little quest for me. Like I really enjoy looking at this kind of stuff, and I want, yeah, if you're watching this and you're looking at the numbers, by all means, feel free to kind of look into it yourself. I feel like there's one of the things that I always suggest to people is look at where, if you've got a wireless pack, if you want to try something similar to this at home and see whether your in-ears are kind of still at a decent kind of level, look at where your in-ear monitoring system is kind of peaking. So we were about 75% of the input, and measure where your pack is with your in-ears, and then go home and plug your phone into your wireless system if you can and crank it up so that it's peaking at 75%. Then put your in-ears back in and turn it up. And if you, in a quiet environment, you put them in, you're like, whoa, that's loud. That whoa, that's loud is what you're listening to on stage. And
All the time, yeah.
Wouldn't subject yourself to it at home, then reconsider your practices on stage would be my advice.
Yeah, it's amazing what we choose to ignore in the middle of a show because the adrenaline's going.
Yeah, 100%.
But that's the thing, is you have to try and separate out the show adrenaline and the show focus and the musical focus from what's actually happening, because that's the only way to avoid the hearing damage.
Exactly. I mean, dude, so as a final thing then, obviously taking away my my company, my bias, all that kind of stuff. What was your genuine experience of kind of going from generic universal in-ears to up to the custom? Because I know you've gigged with them recently.
Yes.
In light of what we know now, what's your thinking?
I don't know how I lived without them for so long. Because honestly, I played a show with a drummer who was smashing away a foot from my ear, and I could hear it nice and clearly, and I could hear my amp clearly, and I could hear the mix clearly, and I didn't feel at the end of it like my ears were ringing. I didn't feel like all the high end had kind of dropped out, which has happened to me before after shows. That always used to be kind of the potential downside of a show, is I would come away with, in the ears.
Yeah.
I mean, if an ear came out, that was even worse.
You've got to get it back in.
Yeah. But with the customs, it never felt like they were going to drop out either.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I know that if I did hundreds more shows like that, I think for what I do, because I sing and I play bass, the ambience were perfect.
Nice.
And so that I could hear enough going on that it did happen a couple of times that I had to go over to the guitarist and say, what key are we playing in? Because he was a guy who plays in weird keys. And he said, oh, we're playing this one in C. And I could hear him as a talking voice without barking at him.
Amazing.
And losing my voice. Because that's the other thing, is if you have to shout, you're expending your vocal ability as a singer.
Yeah.
And that can burn you out, especially if you're doing days back to back. So, yeah, it's been a life changer. So there we go. Ladies and gentlemen, check out DCA Custom In-Ears. The link is down in the description below. And check out everything that Miles does, because he's passionate about making sure your ears are okay. Thanks everybody for watching, and I'll see you later on. Goodbye.